We wanted 6-4, BT.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yep. We talked about that.
I would have taken 5-5.
Yep.
You know, they gave one away in the Angel series. You want to win one there. Obviously, you'd like to not get swept and embarrassed by the Mariners, and you saw great disparity. 4-6, not good. However, they're still fine. They're right there in the thick of things.
I mean, they definitely are. Listen, I don't think the Mets are a playoff team. I've said that for a while now. I think they're going to fall a little short. I don't think that's, I'm not saying that because of what transpired over the weekend, although when you score one run, that's obviously going to amplify the fears of the Met fans who are, beginning to overreact maybe in some cases. I just think that the Mets are a solid team. Mets are a resilient team. But the Mets have too many holes for me to win this race over 162. And that's not a crime because this is supposed to be a transitional year. Now, sometimes during transitional years, you overachieve and you kind of, you hasten the development and the rebuild. Like the Knicks have done that, obviously, with Tom Thibodeau now for a couple of years. You overachieve and then, boom, you're on the tarmac to who knows what. And maybe that's what happens with the Mets moving forward here. But when your best players don't play well, you have no chance.
Think about this, though. The Mets are right now kind of where everybody expected them to be. I'm not talking about preseason or 11 games under, but for the most part, even at their peak, and I know some of us, and myself included, started to get carried away and started talking about the top wild card spot. The difference is when they were chasing that top wild card spot, Atlanta was the top team. Well, now you've seen the Diamondbacks and the Padres start to take off.
Yep.
Those two teams are on a different level. Not to say that they can't be beat. Anybody can be beat, as we've seen, but those two teams are gone. Like, the Mets aren't catching them. However, they're right there with the Braves. And who else are they competing with? The Cardinals? They already beat the Cardinals on the road trip. They can beat the Cardinals, Giants, Cubs. I'm not scared of any of those teams.
You shouldn't be, but there's some of those teams that start to play well. I think the Cubs have won 8 out of 10. Like, the Cubs are playing well. I'm not saying you should be afraid of them.
Right.
And that they're beyond reproach, but I think it's a little short-sighted to just look at the Braves. There are a couple of teams behind you that are coming.
Yeah, but you can't look in the rearview mirror. You got to look in front of them. And if the Mets play their look, if they get caught by the teams behind them, that means the Mets are really struggling. Right now, you got to focus on being as good or better, certainly better than Atlanta, where you're half game back of the Braves right now, and then everybody else that's behind you, like, they're right there. I don't think that there's anything the Mets can do over the next few weeks. Now, if they lose at home to these crappy teams, that's going to be a different story here. But right now, they're in the thick of things for a wild card spot. It doesn't have to be the top wild card spot.
Yep.
Go catch the Braves. To me, that's what it's about right now. It's about the Mets and Braves. And it was about that once, the Mets jumped over all these teams and had the Braves in front and center right there. Obviously, they've come back down to the pack. As we mentioned, the Diamondbacks and Padres leapfrogged them. Atlanta had some horrific losses over the course of the last week. If the Mets had that, we'd be saying, oh, my God, put a fork in them. So, I the Mets can easily still be a postseason.
No, they could be. Listen, you said the teams that they have coming up next here, right? And to me, this is what will define the season.
Yeah.
I really believe this. Those two bad teams are 3 with the A's at Citi Field starting tomorrow, off day today, obviously. And then 3 with the Marlins, who have already, they're not good, and whatever great players or really good players they had, they've pretty much sent them all packing. So, to me, while... Listen, if the Mets would have come back 2-8 from this road trip, or 1-9, or even 3-7, I think it would feel darker than it does. Again, I don't think that they're a playoff team, and I have said that now for about a month or so. I do not think that they'll get there, but I'll tell you this: if they don't win, like if they don't go at least 4-2 or 5-1 against the A's and the Marlins, we're going to circle those 6 games and say that's where they lost that third wild card spot. They've got to dominate these teams.
You think the Braves are a playoff team?
I have more fit now. All right, before I answer that, the way they've looked, the answer is no.
Right.
But,
pedigree, sure.
And I don't want to lean on that too much because we've got, tricked for years. Oh, the Yankees are always going to win because of the Yankees. Well, no, eventually that evaporates. Sometimes you're not quite the same team, and I'm not so sure that the Braves are the same team. I'm going to give you that. Do I think the Braves are better than the Mets in totality? I do. I think they've got more marquee players. I think they just have more elite players than the Mets.
Yeah, but based on what they've done this year, they haven't been.
It's still close. Well, no, it's still close, though, because forget about, listen, Matt Olson's been a disaster, and Pete Alonso has not been very good, but Pete's been better than Matt Olson.
I'm just talking about overall, there's a half game separating the two teams.
No, but still, the Braves stars, their stars have been better than Nimmo. Right. For the most part, their stars have been better than Pete outside of the first base to first base comparison. Like, they still have, I think, more elite or borderline elite players than the Mets do.
I guess the point is, if I ask you, do you think Arizona is a more legitimate team?
I do.
Yeah, me too. And
Carroll has not had a good season. He's starting to come around now, Corbin Carroll.
He hasn't
played well.
If I ask you, do you think the Padres are more legitimate?
No question.
Me too. But then there's everybody else, and that's the beauty of the third wild card. And that, BT, is why the Mets themselves and other people who believe that the Mets could be a playoff team were saying they could because of the third wild card. That's why. These other teams hit their stride now. They're playing well, and they're separating themselves. By the way, the Phillies stink. The Phillies, for a top team, I don't care what their record is. The Phillies been bad for like 3 months
They
here.
played poorly.
And if the Mets had any guts or any kind of legitimate talent, like if Pete Alonso did anything or Brandon Nimmo was playing like he thought he was an all-star, if he kept playing that, the Mets would be closing in on the division here. As much as they faltered and looked awful, they're 8 games back. That is still a winnable division.
But doesn't that
it should be 5 or 6.
But doesn't that tell you all, like, to me, that tells me all that I need to know.
About them?
Yeah, like when the doors open, I don't mean for a week, when the doors open for 5 weeks and you failed to kick it in.
Well, correct.
I mean, you didn't kick it in because you probably don't have the requisite pieces to kick it in.
Correct, and then they didn't do enough at the trade deadline to take themselves. I said go all in because everything was there for the taking. They did not, and now they're getting like Stanek. How's he been? I mean, come on. Jesse Winker, how's he been? I mean, think about what you added.
He batted 4th yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah, he's hitting.
I think he batted 4th.
Guy's got nothing but singles since he's been here, and barely even that. So they went small at the deadline, and the results have shown that. Good for them. That's what they wanted. This team, I guess the biggest point is, this team was built to do exactly what they're doing. Being a team that's on the fringe of a final spot in the wild card race in the National League. So because they went 4-6, it's not the end of the world. Now, you saw the disparity of a real team with real pitching and clutch hitting with the Mariners versus what the Mets are. That's the biggest difference. Like, to me, if you ask me where my difference is from where we left you when we went on vacation, 10 days ago, whatever it was, or the start of this West Coast trip, and now it's that I had hoped that the Mets could make a run, as unlikely as it may be, catch the Phillies who were coming back to the pack.
Yeah, you were saying that.
Stay hot.
Yep.
If they stayed hot, they could have caught them.
Yep.
Well, now that dream is dead. It's still realistic mathematically. It's not realistic because the Mets just aren't good enough.
Well, I got a question for you before we get to these calls. Obviously, Met fans will get you in here. We'll do everything today because we have a lot of catching up to do. BT and Sal on the fan. So you're interesting to me because I think it's very pragmatic.
Right.
And I think it's a very even-keeled approach by you. I think that you're certainly within reason in terms of what they could get with the third wild card. You're not, even though you pissed at Nimmo, and I know you'll unleash on him later.
And Alonso.
And Alonso.
And Stearns.
And Sal's going to still be Sal and let it rip, and that's why we love you. But I think that you're very sensible today. I do. I think that your instincts are spot on with most of these Met issues, but I do have to ask you this. Given whatever the apex of the Mets season was, whatever that delineation or demarcation was in your mind and others, walk-off hits, whatever it might have been, where they've gone since, even though you're even-keeled, you've got to be disappointed.
I think they're treading water. So, now, remember, you know me, like, I always want more. I expect more. But this is by design. So I have to take a step back and say, okay, well, I wanted more from the start of the season. I wanted more in season. I certainly wanted more at the deadline. They didn't do it. I also didn't believe in the core. And if you look at who's struggling right now, Alonso and Nimmo, 2 big pieces of the core. Alonso hasn't had a good year, and I didn't even get a chance to talk about his comments last week. I saw you kind of defend it or whatever, but there's Alonso's season, which is a problem. Nimmo's season, which is a problem, not just because of the impact it's had on the team's offense since the All-Star break, but more so for the future.
I know.
Like, this is who Brandon Nimmo is. That's a problem.
I don't know if he's a 230 hitter. I'm going to give him a little bit more than that.
Inconsistent is what he is. That's my point.
Okay.
So what is Brandon Nimmo? Is he an all-star? Is he a 230 hitter?
You know what I think he is?
He's a guy who's been inconsistent his whole career.
You know what I think he is? I think he's morphed into and he's going to have to settle this. I think he's morphed into not knowing if he wants to be a power hitter, because he stepped on some last year, and I think that kind of changed his mindset and altered his approach, which is not good. I think he's the kind of player who should be a high doubles guy, hit you 275, 280, and, hammer, 19 to 23 home runs almost unexpectedly, where he just catches one perfect. But I think he's been chasing home runs, and he's melted.
If Nimmo has been the player that they are paying him to be or thought he would be, and was for a period of time earlier in the season. If Alonso was the player that everybody believed he was, especially in his walk year, he was supposed to have a big year, the Mets would be contending for the division.
Yes.
So as much as they were built to not win the division or to not be a legitimate threat, they could have been that if Nimmo and Alonso lived up to their expectations. But those guys have not. Now, again, everything's still there in front of them, but the Mets cannot be taken seriously as far as the division goes. Wild card, though, is a different story, BT, because it's there for the taking because of the pathetic nature of the sport where they let everybody in. Mm-hmm. The third wild card allows teams that are mediocre, and that's what the Mets are. They've done a nice job. They're an average team. And a 4-6 West Coast trip, not awful. They're not going to bury them. But I think where fans get discouraged if they see the Mets score a run in 3 games against Seattle, and they got trounced.
I mean, that's embarrassing. We can sit here and say that they're still there, and they are, and, this and that, but you score one run. I don't care. I don't care if you're the White Sox. Yeah. You score 1 run in 3 games. That's pathetic. Like, that's disgraceful.
Seattle's got good pitching.
I understand. Is Randy Johnson pitching?
Yeah, no, I know. And even if
come on.
Like, scratch off a couple. Right?
I know they're good, but, geez, you score 1 run?
I'm with you. That was a pathetic showing. But it's just one series. And, again, they were not really built to contend with teams like that. 888-808-1019 is the number to call. Friends at Town Fair Tire remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Joe is in Clark. I'm sure this will be good. Joe?
What's up, guys? Welcome back from the vacation, Sal.
Thank you.
A couple things, guys. BT, I called you last week, and I told you I don't trust this offense. I don't trust it. They've gone into a collective slump. And I was just looking at J.D. Martinez's numbers. He has 12 homers and 50 RBIs and like 80 less at bats than last year. Last year, he had 33 homers, 107 RBIs in 110 games. I mean, it's mind-boggling what he's been doing. Except for a 6-week stretch, he's done nothing. We know what Alonso is. Nimmo is 5 for 75 now. Alvarez, I know you guys love Alvarez. I'm sorry, but right now he's like the 3rd worst catcher as far as power in baseball. I mean, Higashioka has 16 home runs. He has 4 or 5 home runs. What happened to his power? Yeah, he's been awful. Yeah,
he's been banged up. He's been banged up, and thanks for the call, Joe. And with all that being said, and again, you could pick on the individual performances, and we have to a certain extent. Maybe they'll do a little bit more later on. They're still right there. Like, if the Mets go out there and wipe the floor with the Marlins and A's, or A's then Marlins, you'll feel good about it again. They're right there for the taking. And look at you. It's easy to sit here and just focus on what we watch, whether it's the Mets, whether it's the Yankees, but look at what's going on elsewhere.
Yeah.
The Braves had horrific losses to the crappy Colorado Rockies. Like, what the Braves did against the Rockies is way worse. Blowing a 8-2 lead in the 8th inning, that's way worse than the Mets getting trounced by a very good Seattle Mariners team to me.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with that. We do fixate on our own, and
that's what we do.
Yeah, right. So that's what we care about. That's what we get paid to do, obviously. Right. But you look around the NL, and the American League's a little different, but pertaining to the Mets, you're right. I mean, the Phillies have lost 6 of 10. The Braves have lost 7 of 10. The Mets have lost 6 of 10. The Cardinals aren't playing particularly well. They're in the hunt. They've lost 6 out of 10 here. The Cubbies have won 8 of 10. That's why I said I wouldn't overlook them entirely. But then you get to the West, and this is where it gets complicated. Obviously, the Dodgers are, they got a healthy lead there, but the Diamondbacks have won 8 of 10. The Padres have won 8 of 10. The Giants have won 7 of 10 here. So to me, see, it's not just the Mets and the Braves. I would, now you might not. I would incorporate the Giants. I would incorporate the Cubs, and I would keep the Cardinals. Like, to me, those are the 4, in addition to the Mets, one of those 4 teams is getting that 3rd wild card. Right. And I don't think it's going to be the Mets. Like, I think that there's some other teams that are just better, that are playing better now, and seemingly are built to just finish up these final 45 games better.
Well, playing better now does not mean they're going to be playing better in a few weeks from now.
But it does if you think they have better players, which I do. Well, I certainly, the Diamondbacks, the Padres, the talent's not even comparable.
No, Braves.
I think the Cubs' talent is close.
Braves, Mets, Cardinals, Giants, Cubs. Mm-hmm. You want to put the Cubs in, they're not even 500.
No, I understand that.
I mean,
they're game below 500. They won 8 out of 10. They won 4 straight.
Okay.
What does it mean? It might mean nothing if the Mets go 5-1 against the A's and the Marlins, but if the Mets go 2-4 and the Cubbies keep playing well, like, I'm just saying this, Sal. This is not doom and gloom. Mets have a puncher's chance. I don't think they're built for it, but they got a chance to get there. All I'm saying is, there are other teams coming. And while the Mets are starting to trip a little bit and show what I think is maybe more their true self, other teams are starting to flex a little bit. That would worry me. That's all I'm saying.
I think right now, I think you hit on it earlier, where this is now. We talked about this could be a season-defining West Coast trip. Well, it really wasn't because there was no blood drawn.
Yeah.
Like, if they went 6-4, you would have said, okay, here we go.
Yep.
Pedal to the metal. Let's make a run. If they go 5-5, If they go 4-6, disappointing. But still, there's no blood drawn. Now, if they went worse than that, 3-7, 2-8, now you're talking about season over. Put a fork in them. That did not happen. So, all right, 10 games, difficult games. It happens. Now you got a softer landing spot here coming back home. Lindor talked about it after the game yesterday. They need to keep the vibes high. What got them here to this point? They need to keep that good feeling, even in spite of getting embarrassed, especially on Sunday Night Baseball, national TV, to get swept out of Seattle. But they need to keep the positive vibes amongst that group, which has been their calling card this year. That's why they've had some success. If they don't do that at home against the A's and Marlins, then I think you could start to say, well, this team is now in trouble and maybe can you could start to feel them letting their season slip away and reverting to what we thought coming into the year would be their norm. But BT, they've proven it every step of the way.
Yep.
They've earned this. This is not just me waving the pom-poms. I wouldn't do that. They've earned this because every single time they've been hit with major adversity, they've bounced back. The team was 11 games under 500. They dug out. They started the year 0-5. They dug out. Diaz gets suspended. They dug out. Guys underperform. Guys get hurt. They've dug out of it. So just because they go 4-6 on a difficult West Coast trip, I'm expecting them to dig out of it and maintain their hold on being one of the wild card teams.
Okay, I'm going to stop short of that, but I'll join you up until them getting the last wild card. I don't think the implosion's coming. I don't think that. I don't feel that. I don't think that. And I think that's important, the way you laid out about what they've earned in terms of how we perceive them. Like if the Mets would have started the exact opposite. Instead of being horrendous, they were, 13-4, and they jumped out to this good lead. But really, since then, the last 90 games or whatever it equates to, they've been languishing and playing really poor baseball. To me, that would be less reflective of a team that's got the ability to bounce back. They jumped out quickly, and then they've been tripped up for 3 months, and they've done nothing about it. The fact that the Mets started so poorly, were able to regenerate, they peaked a little bit, they fell back down, they regenerated, they peaked, they picked themselves back up. That speaks to, I think, Mendoza, the growing culture, and all good things. Again, I think their talent is short to be a playoff team, and even if they get it, I don't think they'll do anything when they get there. But I'm not writing them off because of the resilience they've shown so far. I think that that's fair. And I think even whether you're a Yankee lover who hates the Mets or a Mets self-loathing fan, I think if you sell this team short in terms of heart, I think that that's absolutely wrong.
And that's the biggest point. They're not going away. They may not make the postseason, to your point. They're not going away. They've earned that. They've fought every part of this season. This is nothing. A little blip in the road here, 4-6 on a 10-game West Coast trip. Now, though, they have to bury the A's and Marlins. All right, BT and Sal on the Fan. More